And finally, guys, let's talk about fat. So, as I mentioned before, fat is a really energy dense product. So, again, using logic, we'd think we don't want to feed much of this because the dog's going to get fat. However, what fat does is it actually helps satiate the animal. It helps it feel much fuller, much quicker. Hi guys, Dr. Mark here. I'm out today in the sunshine with my 23 Siberian Huskies, or in particular, I'm in the compound with Mabel. Say hi, Mabel. And then over here, we have Luna. Say hi, Luna. Okay, and I've come outside today to talk to you about how, regarding weight management in dogs, there's more to it than simply calories. Okay, so when we think about calories in dogs, in the veterinary nutrition animal science area, we use something called the modified Altwater approach. And basically what that means is for 1 gram of protein or carbohydrate, we make the assumption that there's 3.5 calories. Then with regards to fat, we make the another assumption that there's 8.5 calories per gram. So working off this premise, if you were to create a diet that, say, had 1,000 calories for a hypothetical dog, you would logically think that this could involve any combination of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And as long as you meet those 1,000 calories that the animal has been calculated as needing, it should maintain body weight. Unfortunately, the reality of this is quite a lot different. So, first off, let's look at carbohydrates. So, with regards to carbohydrates, there's really two types. There's processed and unprocessed. So, processed carbohydrates are unfortunately what we typically see in most commercial dry dog foods. Now, these carbohydrate sources, they've had the fiber sources ultimately removed from them. So all you end up is basically just the carbohydrates, the starch component, and nothing else. So these are really utilized by the dogs very effectively, and because the fiber helps to blunt and slow down this process. Ultimately, what this means is that processed carbohydrates have a very significant impact on the blood glucose, the blood sugar levels of the animals, and by causing these peaks and troughs, unfortunately, can result in the animal gaining weight. Now, if you look at unprocessed carbohydrates, and I'm talking specifically about certain fruits and certain vegetables, green leafy vegetables, those kind of things, then they naturally enveloped in a high fiber source, which slows down the impact of these food sources, which, depending on which ones you go for, typically don't have a high amount of sugars in them anyway. And if there is any sugar in them, it is slowed down, like I say, because of the fiber that is inherent to the product itself. So my advice on carbohydrates is avoid these processed types. Go for the natural ones, limit the amount of carbohydrates that you have, but aim for just a few types of fruits and vegetables. And I think by doing that, you'll certainly be making a big impact in terms of maintaining the weight of the animal. Okay, next up, let's look at protein. So protein is made up of something called amino acids. And amino acids are what contributes towards building muscle tissue in the animal itself, in the dog itself. So if you've got a dog and you're taking it out, him or her, and exercising the dog, and you are giving them a high protein diet, this protein is going to help build muscle in the animal. And by building muscle, it's actually metabolically active, meaning that it actually requires more calories. So this is clearly more beneficial for the dog itself. So feeding a high protein diet will help build muscle. It'll increase the calories, the energy the animal needs. And it will also help fill it up. It will feel fuller on a higher protein diet than one that's really high in processed carbohydrates. Finally, guys, let's talk about fat. So, as I mentioned before, fat is a really energy dense product. So, again, using logic, we'd think we don't want to feed much of this because the dog's going to get fat. However, what fat does is it actually helps satiate the animal. It helps it feel much fuller, much quicker. Indeed, in my own research, I found that when I fed a high-fat diet to several dogs when I was at Massey University in New Zealand completing my PhD, the dogs actually didn't gain any weight. They were satiated by simply eating just the requirement even though it was ad lib, they could eat as much as they wanted. They didn't eat any more than what they needed. They felt full on a smaller quantity of food because it was so energy dense, and they simply stopped eating. I guess a simple analogy I would give from the human perspective is if you were to have a certain amount of calories from a big bag of chips and the same amount of calories from a big juicy steak and green leafy vegetables, you would clearly feel a lot fuller with the steak and vegetables as opposed to the chips. So ultimately, this example I've given you just shows that there is a lot more to it than simply just providing an animal with the same amount of calories to maintain weight.